Here.
Ctiy,
Present.
McCormick,
Present.
Mooney.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, this Finance Committee meeting is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration and is being conducted as a virtual meeting in accordance with Ohio's open meeting laws as amended by House Bill 404. In compliance with the Charter and Rules of Council, a copy of all legislation to be considered during this Finance Committee meeting was furnished previous to the meeting to every Finance Committee member through their council email. It is hereby acknowledged without objection that all members have received this legislation. Further, council members must be visibly present for all votes. If you are not present, your vote will not be counted. Okay, with that, let me go over today's agenda real briefly, and then just a couple of housekeeping items, and we will get right into it. So we're going to begin with the presentation of the lakefront plan that was a subject of the Plain Dealer's Sunday front page coverage, and it was at the Planning Commission this morning. And when I understood that this was in the works, I scheduled this presentation to Finance Committee at the first available committee availability. Secondly, everybody should have gotten on their council email the amended rules for the American Recovery Act dollars. John James is kind of putting together everybody's requests, and I'll circulate that document. Chief Dumas is on vacation this week. We'll have a presentation from Finance to explain those rules in a little more detail. If you've opened that document up, you realize it's quite a cumbersome thing to manage through. So that is forthcoming, and that's how we're going to roll with that. With that, I want to begin with the presentation, and then we'll do the presentation first, then our legislative matters, and we'll go right to the council meeting. So I want to turn the floor over to Chief Rybka to introduce his team and tell us there's not a vote to be taken on this today.
Right.
This is for informational purposes and kind of a look ahead of what may come. And I want to turn the floor over to Chief Rybka to introduce the team and to begin the presentation of the lakefront plan.
Mr. President, thank you. Members of City Council and the committee, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Let me ask the presenters to introduce their groups. Let me start with the Browns. Dave Jenkins, if you could introduce yourself and who's there with you today.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon, Council President and members of Council. Really excited to be here today. Great to see all of you. Dave Jenkins, COO of Haslam Sports Group. Also have with me Ted Taiwong, our Chief Counsel, and then also Laney McKinnon from Nelsonberg Woltz, Landscape Architects, and Gary Rebar and Bonnie Tiyuin with Osborne Engineering. So all here and all excited to be with you.
Great, thank you. This afternoon, we're happy to have City Council being introduced to a lakefront plan that continues the city's focus on implementing plans to connect people to our greatest natural resource, Lake Erie. I don't think I'm far off to say the Browns' primary mission is to get the city a Super Bowl. But in this case, the Haslams have stepped up to be catalysts on answering the question of what could happen outside the stadium versus just inside the stadium. And they have assembled a team of consultants that understood the city's waterfront plan, understood the mayor's vision for wanting to have a bold signature lakefront, and have seen the work that's been done in the city in terms of the downgrade of the West Shoreway, an emerging plan over by the Gordon Park area, and further investments that have been made because of the contractual relationship and lease of lakefront parkland to the metro parks. What you're about to see, I think, demonstrates a great outdoor space that has been envisioned by and looked at with great diligence by the consulting team that again creates great open space opportunities, as well as allowing Clevelanders to get to the water. So time is short. I'm going to stop there, turn it over to the Browns and the presentation.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief Rybka. Great to see everyone. A lot of familiar faces on this call. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with council today. Want to be respectful of time, so we'll just dive right into the presentation. And before turning it over to the experts, we always like to start with this quote that, as we began this process a couple of years ago, has really served as our kind of North Star. And the quote is from the mayor on kind of the transformative possibility of the lakefront and really what he saw needs to be prioritized. So the great vision that you'll see emphasizes these points. So we start with the connection of downtown to Cleveland to really open up and unlock so much opportunity on the lakefront. It is our region's greatest natural resource and one of its greatest resources and opportunities, period. So we think by connecting with a focus not just on economic development, although that's obviously a hugely important piece, but also on public spaces and access for all. You'll see a lot of kind of green spaces and parks, and a major focus not just for residents downtown and in close proximity, but to make sure that it's a place that everyone can come. And we think if we do this right, it really will unlock a lot of economic development opportunities, again, across the whole region, because we think that, the track application does contemplate a pretty significant public infrastructure investment, that it should unlock, many multiples of private investment. So that public-private partnership is key. And we think if we get this right, as the mayor dreamed of 7 years ago and people have been talking about for a lot longer, it'll just be transformative for our city and our region. So before turning it over to the experts, we'll go through a quick agenda on the next slide. So we'll go through the background and the vision, and I do just think it's worth emphasizing. Hopefully this came through in the piece yesterday. This is just a preliminary vision, and it's exciting, and hopefully it really starts the discussion. But we know how much work remains, and that we're at the very beginning. We've had some preliminary discussions with stakeholders and gotten some positive responses, but obviously it needs to work for everyone, lakefront stakeholders and residents throughout the city and the region. So just want to really emphasize that. We'll take a quick look at what the lakefront looks like today, what it could be. Again, emphasizing that we know this is going to change. That's probably the only thing we do know, but hopefully an exciting vision that everyone can get behind. And then we'll make sure to leave time for questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Lainey McKinnon, who is a representative of the landscape architect Nelson Bird Woltz, that really has done a great job, a key member of our project team along with others. So take it away, Lainey.
All right, thank you, Ted. And I'll echo everyone's sentiments. Thank you for allowing us to share our vision with you today, and look forward to hearing responses at the end. But before we get to the vision, where we always like to start is with a look at the history and where we're coming from. And this is a bird's eye view of Cleveland from way back in 1877. And you can see some of the landmarks already forming. You have the port, you can see the river. And I think that what struck us about this image is both the rail station that you can see kind of right up against the last pier, and then this beautiful linear park that runs along the waterfront with paths, with opportunities for respite. And this is something that has not been a part of the current vision. So how does that get developed over time? And so if you flip to the next slide, we took this audacious view of what if we took Burnham's plan, and instead of ending and terminating in this beautiful rail station, what if we open it up to the waterfront and really drew everyone out to be able to take advantage of that amenity and that beauty that's there, and really in some ways finishing the plan that his group started so long ago. So that was some of the genesis of our plan, but we have a little bit of a hindrance right now, is that there's a gap, right? We all know there's the big area where the rail comes through, where there's the flyover, and we really need something to be able to stitch that back into the city grid so that we can have an opportunity to both expand out towards the lake, but also to our sides and connect with other projects and other opportunities that are running along the lake's edge. So what we looked at in the following slide here is, I'll give it a second to change. What we looked at is, what do we have now? and this is our existing conditions. You can see the area of the train tracks right where the cursor is. You can see that the mall just terminates there. And if we were able to pull that mall street over, you would run smack into the Route 2, the State Route 2 that's right there where the hand is. Yeah, and so that becomes a bit of a challenge as we move across. And how do we really pull people over in a meaningful way? But we think we have a vision where that's coming together, and we're opening up the waterfront for all of the stakeholders there and really beginning to create a campus for the Cleveland community to access that waterfront and all of the arts and entertainment venues that are along that edge. And so on the following slide, you can see our vision starts with a removal of the Route 2 flyover that allows that continuation of the mall to span across the railroad tracks, across access for the port, across a revisioned shoreway that really begins to separate the vehicular, the train traffic from the pedestrian traffic, and creating a really safe connection, a wide connection across that feels generous, that feels like a beautiful public civic space that really carries forth a lot of what's already happening in the downtown area and just takes you a little bit further so we can all see the water's edge. So we'll show you a plan. Maybe that's also a good way to get into a little bit more detail, and then we'll walk through some various views of the project. We'll start at the bottom edge of the plan here, and this is a plinth that extends over from the convention center. You begin to see there's an oculus, and we'll get a view of that begins to engage with the existing convention center and the large windows that are there. So you create this opportunity to view in, but also to maintain the light into the convention center. Just above that is what we're calling the Erie Stitch, and that's where you get an opportunity to gaze down into where the trains are coming through. And then from there, you have this beautiful system of pathways, some smaller, more garden-like, some more plaza-like, that take you all the way out to the water's edge to be able to look over. It engages with the stadium. It has some opportunity with the Liberty Science Center to our right-hand side here in this drawing. And then at the level of the waterfront, you have a park network that looks at expanding from play to all-season activity at a splash pad potentially, and an opportunity for ice skating. And then really runs the course of the waterfront with a series of paths, planting areas, and then what we're proposing kind of in the middle, that V you see there, is an opportunity to engage with the water, potentially a kayak launch area, or somewhere just to sit and get a little bit closer to the lake. And then ending on our far side with our sunset overlook terrace there, because we have to take advantage of those spectacular views and that beautiful sunset that I have experienced many times. And I think it could be a really beautiful spot to bring community and to really create this campus. So in the following slide, I think as a way to just we wanted to make sure we could highlight what is plinth, and you can see that on the left-hand side. This is the piece that spans across the tracks. It's underneath it is a parking garage, so we're still providing a lot of the opportunity for parking when you're visiting the Science Center, the Rock Hall, the stadium. But then on the right-hand side, you can begin to see what's happening at the waterfront level. And it connects into the already existing pathways at the Rock Hall and really ties that space together, so you have a really compelling and active waterfront throughout the year. And one of the things that we've looked at is, a vision is only as good as if it works. So we've started to delve into some of the, can this actually happen? How does it begin to engage? And you can see in the pink box that we show in the top image, we've blown that up a little bit bigger because that's a really important piece of how our plinth extends across the various transportation networks. And you can see, starting on the left-hand side of the enlargement, you can see this oculus that we spoke about, how you can see down into the convention center, into those beautiful windows, allowing the light, but also allowing dialogue between the two spaces. As you travel towards the right, you see the plinth extending over the rail tracks, creating an opportunity to look down and into those as as we've said many times as a team, like that's a pretty exciting thing when the train is coming in the station to be able to see that and to be experience that activity. You can also see just adjacent to those 4 tracks, you can see an opportunity for a new port access road. So considering them in this as one of our major stakeholders in the waterfront, providing them a nice access. And then our road network as we move on and into the waterfront park is underneath the plinth here, leading to a parking garage. And on top of all of this is this beautiful public amenity that people can gather in and begin to utilize as the waterfront becomes more available to the neighborhood and to the entire region. So I think we can delve into some of the details of these spaces, but I wanted to kind of remind everybody now that we've looked at these pieces, how that Stitch is moving forward. You can see in this particular view, just to the left of both the oculus and the view down into the rail tracks, there's a proposed building there, and we could envision that as a hotel that has a direct connection into the convention center, providing that access and that link and another opportunity to attract people to the region, along with a series of buildings that engage with the regional transportation network, that engage with the Amtrak that's coming through, that you really create a hub of activity here. And we've said this many times, these buildings are not designed, they're ideas of what this could be. And so there's a lot of opportunity to craft them and create them as the vision begins to develop. And you can see that as you move towards the waterfront, there continue to be a series of buildings along that edge. In our view, they're all mixed use. They enliven that waterfront with ground level, groceries for the people who live nearby, with restaurants, with cafes, with dry cleaners, being able to really create a community down here that lives in this area, that engages with the waterfront on a daily basis. So I really love this view. I think this has become a team favorite view of how you can see all these systems layering together, seeing the trains pass underneath. And I don't want to belabor the point, but it's just a really kind of special moment there as we cross over such a robust infrastructure and a real opportunity to make this a hub. And I think in the distance here, you can see the route that's now the new shoreway that passes underneath the plinth for a moment. You can see it here routing underneath the buildings, and it pops out on the other side, right in front of the Liberty Science Center and the Rock Hall, which affords them an opportunity for expanded property and access to their buildings. And we think that, their partnership in all of this is going to be really critical. And we're excited about the dialogue that's been going on between all of the parties to date. We'll look at the following views from that opposite direction. We're kind of hovering above the Rock Hall here, looking back at the plinth. And we wanted to just highlight here the new shoreway that goes underneath the plinth. You can see it here coming through. And then this is from the water looking back towards the city. This is where the plinth meets its end and we open up to the waterfront park at the waterfront level. And what we're envisioning here is this opportunity at multiple levels to be able to look over from the plinth to see out and have that prospect. But also underneath that is an opportunity for a civic gathering space that could be all weather and is, a hub for everyone to gather, to have birthday parties, for children to engage with their parents in a different way and be right there. That's buffered just outside of that with a very large lawn that has a bit of elevation to it, so you can the wind coming off the water can be buffered a bit, so you really create a niche there and a nook to inhabit. You can see on the left of this image a descent down from the plinth with ramps and stairs that bring you down to the waterfront level. And in the middle of that, an idea that maybe there's a skating rink that's in the summer as a water play area. So this really becomes something that is engaged throughout all the seasons. It is not just for the perfect day, but is for all different conditions. And you can see in the background the opportunity for a play area maybe an engagement with the Science Center and having science play, nature play, and really using that as an opportunity to integrate play and education at the same time. And then we'll just move along the waterfront in the next two views, and they're pretty self-explanatory. This is looking at that V, if you remember from the plan, looking at the V that was cutting in with an opportunity for possibly kayak launches for just getting down, having a moment where you're close to the water. And then this is looking back from the west, looking at our sunset terrace and possibly another fountain. As we said, much to be designed here, but a view that this is taking advantage of that aspect. And we couldn't leave it without a sunset view. We had to make sure we capture that. In addition to all of that, I think one of the great things our team has been talking about is the opportunities, as I mentioned in the beginning, to connect out to the vision for the valley from this new development, to connect to the public access plan that's happening to our east, but also to realize that there's future development that could happen in different parcels and how this really expands the opportunity to create new space for the city and to really stitch the grid back together. And in the following slide, you can see just a quick kind of area takeoff of what some of the development parcels that we're already kind of looking at, what those sizes would be. We don't need to delve into that. That gets pretty detailed at the moment, but we started to think about that. And we'll take a moment here as we wrap up just to remind you this is what we have right now at our waterfront. And what our vision for it is a more robust, active space that really becomes an amenity for the community and for all of Cleveland. So I'll stop talking now, and we have a very short video that we like to share with you because I think the fly through of the space is really quite compelling. So. Here's our oculus that we talked about in this really beautiful view out towards the water.
Should put some dramatic music with it.
I know, we need to work on that. I think it's probably playing on one of our ends, but not on all of our screens right now. And then just a slightly different view, looking at that waterfront. And really that active space in the bottom of all these buildings that really enlivens that, being able to walk over for lunch or a dinner, meet a friend for dinner after your day in downtown is done, really has a nice opportunity there. And then coming from the direction of the Rock Hall, looking down the new Shoreway. And thinking about the connections that we're able to make by opening up this area that's, been inhabited by infrastructure for so long. It really provides more space and breathing room to these vital cultural institutions on the waterfront and really allows everybody to create a campus together at that edge. And the iconic windmill, we can't forget to highlight that. That is a really fantastic piece of infrastructure on the waterfront.
Good, thank you.
And then you can't end something that has this dramatic of a view without the sunset. So without the sunset view, right? You gotta really play it up so we can see how gorgeous it can be.
All right.
So we'll end there, and unless anybody on the team has anything to add, but if there are questions or something we can clarify,
If
please let us know.
Thanks, Lena. If I could step in and again, thank you, Mr. President, and members of council for the time today. This is obviously a bold vision for our lakefront. From the mayor's perspective, it helps position this city going forward. In terms of today, it was an introduction of the plan to council and not seeking any action today. In terms of next steps besides starting to get publicly engaged with the plan, there's a need to further do engineering analysis to make sure that it all works, and to conduct the important traffic studies that support an action that would suggest a continuation of what was started on the west side with the shoreway going through the North Coast Harbor area. So if we're successful in the state inviting us to secure some additional dollars, and the ask to the state is 5.6 million, we would be back to City Council for apply, accept, and also for the match portion, which is 2.5 million that would be coming from funds previously allocated by the City Council, the $10 million funds for a pedestrian connector down to the lakefront.
Well, good. Thank you, Chief. Want to thank Dave, Ted, and Laney as well. This is very bold, and this is just a really very great look at what the lakefront could look like, since we've been only talking about this for a century or so, and there's plenty of plans on plenty of shelves. So it'll be interesting to really just if we can get the really kind of rally around a plan. And I think the first step is the track application. That's what it's called, the track application, right, Chief?
Right, with ODOT, correct.
ODOT. And we would have to pass legislation to apply and accept those dollars, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I guess my only question on the plan is that Laney mentioned a couple times the new shoreway. So my understanding is that the shoreway from the article and all would end at 9th and then at West 6th Street, and traffic would be rerouted. Is this more of a softening of the traffic with the same shoreway? With a new shoreway, or is it rerouting some of that traffic that right now gets off at either West 6th Street to the west or 9th Street to the east?
It's a softening. It's a downgrade, but you're correct. Coming eastbound, one would be required to exit off of the shoreway at West 6th Street and at West 6th Street ramp, and then there'd be an ability at West 3rd to get on a shoreway boulevard that would cut between West 3rd, East 9th, and then to be able to proceed out heading east. Coming westbound, again, it would be an exit at 9th Street, and either, again, going forward to West 3rd or going up 9th Street to Lakeside. And again, it's part of that. The goal is to extend the city grid towards the water to try to promote safety by separating pedestrians from vehicles. And but again, it would require further traffic analysis, modeling, and studying to make sure that indeed all flows and continues to work.
Okay, thank you. And I will have numerous questions as this develops, but I would like to, any plans you can get us, any drawings that are available, whatever you give the Planning Commission, if you could forward that to the council, we can, this is going to be a series of many committee meetings moving forward. So if you could get us as much information that we can look at to really kind of delve into this, and we can, so we're, when we get the track funding, we have solid knowledge of what's happening.
Very well.
With that, I will turn over the questions to my colleagues, Councilman Tony Ctiy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council President. I was going to make you use your mug today, that you're on mute. This is just pretty amazing. I mean, it's just a spectacular vision. Congratulations and thank you to everybody who's participated in putting this incredibly complicated jigsaw puzzle together on a lakefront that has not only some loose parts, but some incredible amenities already there. and stitching it all together. Just a couple of quick questions. I don't know if this is Lonnie, if this is in yours or not, but certainly some of the buildings on the, I know you just put some of these buildings up as massing to show that what can be built there. Is there height restrictions within that particular lane that you're putting those buildings relative to the airport?
Yes, there are height restrictions for the airport, and everything we've shown does meet those requirements. So we're under those height restrictions.
Great. That's great, because that really does show adding a significant density that really will add a lot of value to as this development moves forward. The I know you had building over the convention center and those windows that are there that are looking out of the lakefront now. So what's the view from those windows as that gets built over?
So we envision that to be like a garden amphitheater, you could say it that way. So you have terrace seating that moves down and takes advantage. You could read a book if you had a half hour between meetings or something, and then really experiencing those with shade, with plant material, softens it a bit. So it's not just a hole. It's actually somewhere that's, able to be inhabited, but also has a view out when you're in that convention center, that it's inspiring, that it's engaging.
I would also.
That's the $1 million view that Jeffrey Applebaum told us all about when the convention center was getting built, and I would not want to compromise that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, this has been shared with the CCCFDC, and so the view from the top is enhanced, and then from the ballroom windows, the light still comes in, which is what's critical. You still have a nice view out. And keep in mind, during their meetings, they do block light also. So this has been reviewed with the CCCFDC and the folks at the convention center, and they're thrilled by it. And of course, the key to them is what they're trying to do with the convention center is allow their guests to get access to the lakefront. So this enhances everything about lakefront access, not to mention the fact that hotel that you see there, we've always talked about, assuming once again, as we get over COVID and we get the critical visitation back, having an additional hotel with a possible connection is something that they're very thrilled by. So they're very, very happy with this whole plan.
Great, thank you. I know that was an important element. And just a general question, I don't know if this is Chief Ripka in your view, the land that is being consumed, especially around the port, and the relationship and the need for that land, how does this overlay with that?
You said with the port?
Correct.
Yeah, the port is there. They're going through a master planning process themselves. We did have a discussion with Will Friedman at the Port Authority. One, to indicate that there was one of the goals of this, again, is to separate people and pedestrians from vehicles and trucks, and certainly the access, ingress, egress out of the Port Authority would still be maintained. The discussion was relevant to where the parking area is along West 3rd, which is now not currently used by the Port Authority, but the expectation is that the Port Authority will continue to be in their current location, and their engagement with this plan will be focused on getting truck access in and out of the port.
Great. And then lastly, because as the council president said, there's just a myriad of questions and a lot more engineering and design work to be done. I had the pleasure of cleaning up one of your old spaces, Chief, Booth Avenue, the connector underneath the bridge over there, and want to thank the administration for their ongoing commitment to the downtown connector. But that raises the question of, we've talked a lot about pedestrian and vehicle, as well as rapid transit and train, but bike. Does this come into play with some protected bike lanes or bike access? That's a growing part of our community, and a lot of the design work that we're doing that does connect us when we talk about equity on the east side and connecting to downtown.
It does accommodate cyclists. Obviously, those kinds of issues will need to be further analyzed, but importantly is how do you, if you're not downtown, how do you get here? The downtown Slavic Village connector, how does someone get on there to get to this site? If you live on Lake Avenue or Detroit Shoreway, how can you be on a cycle and be able to get to this site? To be able to go from the North Coast Harbor out to the nature preserve on the east side, Gordon Park, and the emerging plans for north of Gordon Park and Martin Luther King. All of that is an important part of the network, and it's don't ask Freddie Collier the question, because his response will be a half an hour about multimodal and the scooters and all of that. Suffice to say that all of that is an important part of how to get people access to the water.
Great. Thank you very much, and congratulations. This is a great vision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Ctiy. I'm going to Councilman McCormick, then Councilman Plenzek. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for setting up this conversation. I appreciate it. And to the team from the Browns and Chief Ripka in the mayor's office, appreciate the time you've put into this. Mr. President, I understand that this is, the start of a vision, so it's not necessarily, a fully baked plan or, exactly what some future project will look like. But I just wanted to comment on the concepts that we see in front of us today. First and foremost, I think I really appreciate the evolution of this conversation to this idea of a land bridge. I think it just much more seamlessly connects our downtown neighborhood to the lakefront versus a standalone bridge or other type of connector. So I just want to applaud the prioritizing this type of real connector, this real natural connector to the waterfront, which of course we all know that for decades has been severed by the shoreway and the tracks. So the other thing, Mr. President, I want to flag too is just the priority of public space here. I think that is so important for this project, so that whether you're from Old Brooklyn or downtown Cleveland living, when you come here, you can kind of seamlessly enjoy it. You don't even need to go in and buy a coffee or go to work here or go to a Browns game. If you want to just come down and enjoy your waterfront, no matter where you're from, you can do that. And I think that that's so important about this plan and how it prioritizes that. So those kind of two fundamental features, I think, are, and again, understanding that this is a vision and not yet a adoptable plan. I think leading with those two major aspects are heading in the right direction to ensure that we have a lakefront that is exciting and also accessible to all of our residents. And Mr. President, I think of Public Square, and you could go any weekend where the weather cooperates, and there's kids of all different backgrounds playing in the splash pad, enjoying the lawn, having a sandwich, whatever it might be. So thinking about that as a way to think about how this, high quality, world-class public space can really serve our entire community. So I appreciate that. And Mr. President, the last thing I will say is, this is a bold vision. It's a big vision. It is a comprehensive vision, and we shouldn't be scared of that. I think for, when it comes to the lakefront, for many, many, many years, decades and decades and decades, we've struggled to come up with a bold vision like this. So I applaud everyone involved here to think big. Cleveland, we're a world-class city. We got to start acting like it. And I think this is a great way to do that, to really leverage this one of our most important assets. Councilman Griffin always, make sure that our most important assets are people, but this is one of our most important assets, this waterfront. So to truly leverage it, access it, prioritizing public space, I think is just a tremendous start to this conversation, and really could transform the city. And as we think about, Mr. President, the future, whether it's digital workplace or connectivity, making Cleveland an even more attractive place to live, to work, to visit is going to be critically important. So again, I understand that this is not a fully baked plan yet, but I really like the way that this is heading, and the fundamentals of it, I think, are in the right place. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with everyone involved. Maybe we can get this done in the mayor's last 7 months. Quick timeline, Chief Ripka. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman. And I want to just acknowledge everything that you said is right on point in terms of where we are and where we're going. We've got to think big in this town. We've had too many plans on too many shelves. Maybe it was the blessing that the bridge that we tried to get up before the RNC didn't work out and the cost overruns prevented it, because now instead of doing a parcel by parcel piecemeal development, let's do something big. And one thing that wasn't on the current slides that were presented, that Lenny presented, was there's really no good way to get to the stadium or this area unless you're either coming out of the pit or you're coming down the very busy 9th Street with the Shoreway exit right there. And I'll just remind people that there's a bridge that is no longer in operation that you used to walk to, and it used to empty out, it used to put you onto the Shoreway entrance. Then you'd have to climb up this concrete little slope. And if it was wet or icy, that was a problem. It was just,
There you can see it.
Was that?
You can see it. Look where the cursor is at.
That's not a big league city move. Having your guests emptied out onto the Shoreway, to cross the Shoreway, then to climb up a concrete hill to nowhere. So I think I agree with everything Councilman McCormick said. This is a great start. Let's really just make sure that we always emphasize, no matter what we do at the lakefront, whatever this looks like, public space needs to be the thread that runs through everything, and something that includes everybody, make sure that everybody can use this. So thank you, Councilman. I want to go to Councilman Mike Polensek now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to all the participants and the presenters. I remind folks that years ago, when I came down here as a rookie, I took a Saturday and did some exploring at City Hall, and there was a place at the time called the Penthouse, and I went up there on a Saturday, and this whole penthouse was full of models. Cardboard models of buildings, and it was just amazing. This whole place was, and I stood there in awe of all these models that never came to reality, of downtown projects and sometimes projects in our neighborhoods, but it just never materialized. So as we talk about this bold vision for the lakefront, I'm reminded of that. So I'm trying to better understand the mechanics. Was this design concept approved by city planning or just reviewed by city planning?
Mr. President, to the councilman, today was the first time the plan had been viewed by the Planning Commission, and again, this is all relatively new in terms of its being folded out to the public, and it's, as the Council President and Councilman McCormick indicated, it's really the start of public engagement on this vision, and allowing us to then further look at the technical issues such as engineering and traffic.
So it's basically, or being presented to us, the body, as a wish list. This is a concept. This is something that we would like to see happen.
That's fair.
Okay, because I'm just trying to get a better understanding. And so what we're looking at, the presentation of all the land that has been incorporated into this design, is it all public property, or is there any private property involved?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, the amazing thing about this is that virtually is all land that is controlled by the city of Cleveland.
Okay. And ultimately, and a good part of it, the Port Authority as well, correct?
I wasn't speaking, yeah, right. West of West 3rd Street would be the Port Authority, and then going east of East 9th, you've got some government installations and the airport and so on.
Okay, because, as we've talked, and you look at other major cities across the country, when you look at their emphasis on lakefront and lakefront planning and utilization, you see a real emphasis placed on boating opportunities. And I see in the plan there is one, the former slips, I think it is,
right,
that's being advocated for a marina or boating activity. I think it's one of them, at least. And I know that you had mentioned in a moment ago that there has been or will be continued or additional discussions with the Port Authority, because many of us have questioned over the years the utilization of all that lakefront for just the storage of basically rolls of steel, where those could have been and can be stored in other places throughout the city and Cuyahoga County. So there is a lot of just plain and simple storage down at the lakefront rather than utilization for public use. So I hope, again, as you engage the Port Authority, that there is a real discussion, and someone indicated they're doing long-range planning. I think that's important. How much of that is actually needed today for port use, and how much of it can be freed up for additional public use and or marinas? The slips are there, the dockage is there. The infrastructure for the marinas just would have to be installed. So again, looking at other lakefront cities and having a lakefront ward myself, I see the advantages. I have 2 marinas now, not big ones. They're working class marinas. I call blue collar marinas, but I see how they benefit the community. I see how they benefit the residents and the general population. So again, marinas, aquatic use is going to be very critical, in my opinion, to this lakefront plan. The railroad is not in your plan, your presentation. The railroad obviously cannot be relocated, but you've mentioned about State Route 2. And those of us who travel from the east headed west, I know so often that's the route I take. And now we're talking about it ending at 9th Street. And I really hope that in the course of your long-range planning on this proposal, that you really really consider the movement of vehicular traffic, because not only do we use the lakefront, we want to utilize it. We want people to have access, but there is also movement east to west and vice versa. And so I think Route 2, the ending it eastbound at 9th and ending it westbound at what you indicated, I think it was West 3rd.
West 6th.
West 6th. I think that is going to cause a problem. I think that's my own opinion. I think that's going to cause a serious problem as it pertains to vehicular access and vehicular movement through the city. Because we still have to think about commerce, not just for downtown, but for the whole northeast portion of the and west side of the city as well. So again, I think that's something that really has to be drilled down into. Does that make sense to end those roadways where you're, at least at this point, proposing? I guess that's going to be part of the planning process. And then, Mr. Chairman, if the 5.6 million that is being requested, is that for design and engineering? I'm still not clear what the 5.6 is for.
Go ahead. Was someone else going to respond?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's primarily for preliminary engineering work to further study the various concepts as to their buildability, I guess, and whether, as Lena's mentioned, does it work, and but also the necessary traffic studies to address the discussion point that you just raised, Councilman. There is just further analysis of this vision. It is not baked. It is not a conclusion. It is a vision and plan that plays off. If you go back and look at the lakefront plan that the city formally approved, is a trajectory from that plan in terms of an implementation of it.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. And then the 2.5 that's being requested of the city, that's for what as well?
That'd be a match. So in total, it's an $8.1 million preliminary engineering budget. 2.5 would be the city's local match, which again would come out of the 10 million that was authorized by council several years back for the pedestrian connector.
And Mr. Chairman, when would you expect that to come before us? That either the 5.6, is that coming to us or the county?
No, it'd be coming to it would come to the city. So all of that would be in a legislation in probably in August.
In August, to apply and accept?
Yes.
Okay. And then the 2.5 would be a part. Do you know where that 2.5 is going to come from?
Yeah, it's out of the 10 million that the council authorized several years back to implement a pedestrian connector. At the time, as the council president pointed out, the thought was that the Rosales Bridge would be where those dollars would be expended. But, you know, there was a real concern with the functionality of building a 14-foot wide, 900-foot long bridge versus, in this case, the mall is 350 feet wide, and this extends that 350 feet going all the way down to the water.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming that the movers and shakers of this are really looking at the private sector contribution or engagement here, because obviously, you know, we all want to think big, and we all want, you know, amenities that we classify as big city amenities. But then I also want, you know, big city amenities in my neighborhood, and I want to think big in my neighborhood as well, and all of our wards as it pertains to development opportunities and new improvements and capital projects, et cetera. So it's a balancing project. All of us who grew up in Cleveland, we want to see the nicest downtown that we can possibly have, but we also want to see neighborhoods that are quality and livable and have all the things that we hear every day from our constituents. So obviously, as we move forward, I'm really going to be looking at the commitment of the private sector into this, because I find so often when I look at projects, whether it be the medical mart, which we all called it at the time, and other projects, there's a pattern here that if the private sector is unwilling to invest, it raises serious concerns whether we should or not. Because if the private sector doesn't see it being profitable or enhancing their operation or their bottom line, then they've come to the realization they're not going to invest in it. And therefore, so often we find ourselves wearing the financial jacket for projects that really don't materialize or become financial millstones around us. So this project is very bold. There's no doubt about it. It's probably one of the boldest designs that I have seen in my time here for the lakefront. That in itself is impressive. I'm going to be looking at who is prepared to step up at the plate and help pay for this project or be engaged in that process, because if not, it won't happen. Because what's the estimated total price of this entire project? Do you have any idea?
We have to move a little bit, but Chief,
okay.
Can you answer the question?
I'm sorry.
What would be the estimated price?
230 million.
Okay.
And Mr. President, to the councilman, we're all in agreement on that. The expectation is you don't make that kind of public infrastructure investment without leveraging private investment and private participation in this. And I might say the city of Cleveland's not capable of doing this kind of an analysis, an in-depth analysis and plan. This was already the private sector in the name of the Browns and the Haslams that approached the mayor and said, hey, we're willing to put skin in the game. We're willing to be a catalyst that will, I think, make such a compelling argument that the private sector will participate.
Appreciate that, Chief.
And that's what's critical, is that the private sector truly step up to the plate, because if not, it won't happen. It won't work. And so they have to have skin in the game. They have to be partnered. They have to be shareholders in this. So anyway, on that point, I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to the future discussions that come before the body. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Plancik. Councilman Griffin?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I too am so excited about this project. It's very well thought out. I'd like to, really thank the Browns organization and especially Dee and Jimmy Haslam. I think that this is really a bold plan and it complements our downtown in so many different ways. I often tell people, if Cleveland is going to be a special place, we're going to have to be first, which means we're going to have to be first out the gate with things like this. We're going to have to be different, which means this is unique. We have to be able to think out the box and different. And then we're also going to have to make sure that we're the best. And I think that this offers probably one of the best waterfronts that I've seen. And I've been to a lot of different locations where the waterfront is critical. I think this helps also lend to a couple of other regional things that we're trying to do. Yes, even though I always think granular and Cleveland, but we also need to start thinking regionally. And I'm really interested, Chief Ripka, if you can tell me how this helps connect and facilitate the lakefront walk that we want to try to create from Euclid to Lakewood. One of the travesties that I think in this city is that we don't, and the presenters can tell me as well. One of the travesties is that we don't have just a continuous path to go all the way from Euclid, far east, all the way through Bracknell, all the way through the city to Lakewood, to the far reaches of Cuyahoga County. So how does this facilitate that connectivity?
Chief?
It is such a dramatic signature place that it's going to draw not just people from our wards and living in the city of Cleveland, but people from all over the region. So as Lainey pointed out in her presentation, the abilities to not just connect from Public Square through the malls down to the water, but going from east and west are going to be critically important. And we're seeing that. I happened to be on the Shoreway going west yesterday. It was the afternoon. It was a beautiful day. And there were walkers, there were cyclists using the multi-purpose trail next to the downgraded Shoreway. And I think there's an emerging plan that's going to kind of replicate that pattern of success on the east side as well. And then continuing out, not just through Mike Kolenczyk's ward on the west, or Councilwoman Spencer's ward on the east, Councilwoman Spencer on the west, but going out into the suburban communities as well. I think there's close discussion and engagement between Director Collier and the networks as to how you connect Cleveland neighborhoods to something that is all of Clevelanders' place, and then also going beyond the borders of the city and into the region as well.
Great, thank you. It was something very unique that I seen during the Hall of Fame game last year or a couple years ago, when a lot of the owners had their yachts out on Lake Erie. And as you looked out of a lot of the windows, you seen a lot of like big, nice yachts. And it made me, recognize, why don't we have something akin of a cruise port attached to this, of basically large, maybe not cruise ships, but just some very large type of boatings that can help open up commerce or open up tourism, going from here to Toronto, here towards Detroit, here towards Windsor, and open up a lot of the Lake Erie region.
Councilman, Mr. President, Councilman, great point. In 2020, it was projected that there would be 35 cruise ships that are cruising with passengers just on the Great Lakes that would have made a visit to the city of Cleveland, and those people visiting our city, but for the pandemic that just killed that industry for the last year. So I think as this plan matures and evolves, recreational boating opportunities for people will be important, but also how do we capture that growing industry of tourism as well.
Just two other questions, Council President, because I believe this is going to be a long, drawn-out conversation. I also am interested in how many housing units or how many rooftops we anticipate will go up in those 70 developable acres, because downtown is a neighborhood. So how many rooftops do we estimate will go into that developable area that we're looking at down here?
Lainey, would you have that information?
I'm pulling it up. I slipped my mind real quick, but give me just a moment.
There is a projection that connects to the pictures that you see.
The reason I mention that is because if there's a certain amount of rooftops, then we're also looking at other things that can be amenities like grocery stores and other things that can help, service this area. Because we want to look at this as a neighborhood. We want to look at schools. We want to look at the opportunity of having a downtown school. You have a downtown play area, so that this really becomes the neighborhood that a lot of people would like to see. In conclusion, Council President, I think I'm glad you brought this to us ahead of time. This gives us a long time to deliberate and really hear a lot of public feedback. We know that we're in the age of hearing a lot of public feedback. I think you introducing this right now is a good move. One of the things that I would just tell everybody is that we are anticipating, even though everybody is giddy over the 511 million, I'm still trying to figure out where our 40 million went, but I know those were estimated. Everybody's giddy over those dollars, but it's also very important to try to be shovel ready for infrastructure projects. And I believe that we're probably going to see an infrastructure bill with the Biden administration in the near future. So is there a timeline that we should have this shovel ready in order to be able to qualify for some of those infrastructure bills? And do you need a resolution from council, or how would we make this as shovel ready as possible?
Not yet. I think the big first step would be, Mr. President, to the councilman, is our ability to get access to the track dollars. That as public engagement's happening, as this plan matures and gets modified, that would allow us to accelerate the ability of, especially looking at the primary spine for the entire thing you see on that screen now, and that is that land bridge coming from the mall down to the water's edge. Without that, the rest of this is really a nice picture. So that is where a lot of the focus will be, and for us to get that to be shovel ready. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to hesitate. I'm not going to give you a guess on that, though.
Thank you. And I know that Councilman Polensek articulately said it as far as making sure that we have private sector commitment to this, but this is going to eventually have to take some public sector support. And I just want, my colleagues and the rest of the listening public to really understand, this is not about downtown versus the neighborhoods. This is really about making sure that we make Cleveland as a city strong and whole. And we know that we definitely need more investment in our neighborhoods, but this is a very important catalytic project. And I'll just close with this. My sons, who I often bounce things off about just general public, said they had never been more proud to see the city the way that it looked, for the draft and other things, because of how it was designed and everything else like that. So as we're competing on a big stage with some mid-tier cities like Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Louisville, these type of projects are important for us to be first, be different, and be the best. So thank you, Councilman President. Thank you to my colleagues for considering.
Thank you, Councilman Griffin. I'm going to go to Councilman Conwell, and I'm going to ask Majority Whip Blaine Griffin, if you'll chair for a second. I have to phone home for about 3 minutes. If you will chair while I step aside for 1 second. Thank you.
I got it. Councilman Conwell and then Councilman Bashir Jones are the next two that I see.
Okay, I won't be long. I want to personally thank Jimmy Haslam for the football stadiums and the work that he has done to our community, as well as his wife. So I want to thank you on behalf of the Glenville community. The football field looked great. You also rehab inside the Glenville Recreation Center, and we're using that for musical programs. So you always give back. So let me ask this question through the Chair Griffin. What can we do to help? I heard Councilmember Mike Polensek mention that a lot of projects have been introduced to us, but what can City Council do to make this become a reality?
Chief or anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I think as public engagement starts to take place and people realize that Lake Erie and our waterfront is everybody in this community's place to enjoy, that people get engaged and be a part of the discussion. I think that's the biggest thing, to get momentum behind a bold idea and a concept. And I think coming out of this, just the awful year we've all had to experience over the last year, coming out of that pandemic, I think it's uplifting when there's big stuff that you can embrace and be a part of. But there's buildings in this thing but it starts with the public spaces. And I think the best thing that council could do as this starts to get rolled out over the next months is to ask your constituents, residents of the city to be engaged.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question to the chair, to the chief. When we do survey analysis in the wards, how can my residents become engaged? You'll give me the stuff and we'll drop it off to them and we'll email my residents, and it's a good piece, it's bold. So how can we become more engaged? Through the chair to the chief.
I think just the example of what you just did, you've always been great with that in terms of distributing information out and promoting good things that are happening in your ward and in the city. And I think that opportunity will arise for all of us in the next months.
So when do you think we'll do, right now, let me tell you this. This is what I see. The Browns did a great job of presenting to us. They're building a case in this project. They're building a case. And building the case, they want to reach out to key stakeholders and partners. That's me, you, chief, city council, my constituents. Then when we do that, then we'll move forward to the planning phase. So saying that they're building a case, I want them to also include, and they mentioned the science center, children. They just glossed across it. I don't know the planning for the science center. I want children to be more engaged. I want it to have an atmosphere, for me, of family. When you go there, you feel family, more family engaged. And that kind of atmosphere, I think, would be great through the chair to the chief.
Consistent with the plans, if we were able to have time to just study that entire thing you're looking at on the screen, from the science center along the Mather out to the lake, that's all family, and it's a fountain like you have on Public Square. It's potentially some ice skating in the winter. It's a 12-month-a-year place for people to enjoy.
Yeah, because when you have the atmosphere there, also when they were building their case, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, music. I mean, that's us, man. And we don't build that case with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too much. I mean, we're the king of rock and roll, and to build a culture, and not just buildings, but to build it that the atmosphere is good and the atmosphere is great with the rock and roll and with the family atmosphere of the Science Center. I mean, I'm there for all of that. They did a great job presenting. I don't want it to sit on a shelf. I know it's the framework. I know they're building the case, but I'll do whatever I can do to help it to become a reality. I don't know, will it cost $500 million? I don't know, do we have to do it in phases? But I know this lakefront need to be developed. The lake is our biggest asset, and it's just sitting there. And we can build energy from that. So I want to thank the Cleveland Browns for presenting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Conwell. We have Councilman Bashir Jones, and we'll go to the legislative agenda. Councilman Bashir Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. Chairman, to the Mr. President, to the chief. You said the number was $10 million.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, several years back, the city council appropriated $10 million to, as did the county, to be applied towards a construction of a pedestrian connector. At the time, the plan that was being studied and looked at and engineered was a 900-foot long, 14-foot wide bridge that the museums and Science Center, Rock Hall, the Browns said, well, how is that going to help us move people down here? So it didn't go any further. But the money is still sitting there, and it's out of those funds that we would do some of this pre-development, preliminary engineering work.
Now, Chair, to the chief, this funding is for just a plan and analysis, correct?
that's the next part of this plan, right? Is to further do engineering analysis, traffic studies, traffic modeling, and to elevate the plan to the next level, and it'll get modified some as that analysis takes place.
Right. But Mr. President, to the chief, it is a possibility. Well, let me ask this question. This plan analysis is going to, out of the 10 million, is going to cost how much?
The next phase of study is 8.1 million, and the request will go to the state for 5.6 of that.
Awesome. And that's just for the plan. That's not for the completion. That's just for the construction.
Yeah, that's not construction.
So it's a possibility, Mr. President, to the chief, that this doesn't become a reality. We could have paid for it, paid this plan, and it not coming to fruition. Maybe they find out that this isn't the best place to do this.
My only reaction to that, and that's possible, Mr. President, to the councilman, is I cannot overemphasize what the Cleveland Browns did. It has nothing to do with that 100-yard field you see on your screen now. It's them stepping up as a good corporate citizen, and the consultant team that they put together, some of which are with us on this call today, did a pretty thorough analysis and I think Laney made the comment, we don't want to be putting out a plan that we know doesn't work. So there was a lot of analysis done. There's more engineering analysis. There's more traffic analysis that's needed. It's so big and complex that it just requires further study. But I don't want to lose the fact that a lot of investment was made by the Browns to assemble a first-class team that really diligently analyzed this, looked at it, and felt comfortable that this is a plan that could be delivered on.
Yeah. I thought it was a beautiful plan, and to the Browns organization, of course, we're expecting the Super Bowl, right? So we are really excited. But I guess the point I'm making is that with the $8 million and however much it takes, there is a possibility that we are, as a city, willing to invest in something that's a risk, to be quite honest. I mean, it is a risk. And the point I want to make is that, we build our downtown for our visitors, and it's imperative. And this is a project that I support, by the way, but I'm making a broader point that what about our residents? And, it's clear that the city has the ability to drive investment. We saw that in the Tremont neighborhood. We've seen that in different parts of the city. We see that happening downtown. The city has the power and the ability to drive investment. And we need to have more investment in our neighborhoods. Councilman Forensic brought it up. It's not about an either or, but it's a reality that on the east side and the west side, across the whole city, that there's specific pockets that feels as if they have been forgotten. So listen, I want the downtown to be as great as anyone. But once again, we build our downtown for our visitors, and we have to become more mindful of our residents. That's why I really appreciate working with you, Chief Ripka, with what we're doing with the schools and the development within the neighborhoods, taking school buildings that weren't being used and putting them into good use in our neighborhoods, providing development opportunities for developers and upcoming developers. So I really appreciate the vision that has been set forth. But I definitely want to just make that clear. We have to figure out a way to drive investment all throughout the city, so that everyone feels as if that they are welcome and appreciated. And lastly, we have to make sure that we have a downtown that we're building up in a very beautiful way, but that we're not just building for visitors, but that is also inclusive of the residents that live in the city, that they feel welcome to be there, that they feel appreciated. I think this is very important. So, Chief, thank you to the Browns organization. Thank you for your work. And, we want to be able to push this Browns organization to not only do investments downtown, but we want to be able to extend our reach throughout the city. This is very important. So Chief Ripka, thank you. To the Browns organization, thank you. I look forward to seeing this plan flush out more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And I want to conclude this portion of the meeting with my acknowledgement to the Browns and to the chief of what a dramatic, tremendous undertaking this was. We've all sat across the table and we know how much planning costs and what a plan like this must have cost the Browns. So they have skin in the game already. We assume we're all going to have more going forward, but this is a very good partnership. So I just want to thank everybody for what we've done. I want to move to the legislative agenda and wish the Browns team a good rest of the day and look forward to working with you on this great plan. So thank you all very much. I'm now going to move to the legislative
Thank you,
agenda.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Laney. Thank you, Bonnie. Jeff, what else do I see?
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the order we're going to go in for your planning purposes. We're going to go with public safety, public utilities, public works capital project, and there's a couple of council pieces we need to hear. So with that, I'm going to begin with public safety. We have two ordinances. Is Director Howard on with us?
Yes, I'm here, Chair, President.
Okay, I'm going to begin with ordinance